Millionaire throws his wife out of the house because she can't have children. 7 years later, he's shocked to see her with identical twins who look just like him. Evelyn Whitmore was the kind of woman who never accepted no for an answer. To her, the world was a chessboard where every piece had to be in the right place, and she was the one who decided the rules of the game. From an early age, she made it clear to everyone around her that the Whitmore family's top priority was the legacy. It didn't matter what had to be sacrificed, which concessions were required, or how people felt. The name. Whitmore had to survive, and survive with power. She ran the Whitmore mansion like a general. Every detail had to be perfect, from the plush rugs on the floors to the flawlessly plated meals on the table. But more than that, Evelyn managed people. Her children, the staff, even her husband, gone for years, always orbited her will. And the greatest target of her obsession was Gavin, her only son, and in her mind, the true guardian of the Whitmore future. Gavin had grown up hearing the same speech over and over, "You are the life of our name, Gavin." Nothing in the world is more important than that. Nothing. While other kids played and lived without big worries, he had lessons on inheritance, investments, social connections. It was never a matter of choice, it was his fate. And Evelyn made sure he never thought otherwise. In the Whitmore mansion, emotion was almost a weakness. Gavin learned to swallow tears, hide his pain, and above all do what was expected. Though as a child he dreamed of simple things. Running barefoot in the yard, eating ice cream without asking permission, blasting music in his room. But all those wants were erased by his mother's expectations. Evelyn didn't care about nonsense. Gavin had to be perfect because a perfect heir made a perfect family. Her control wasn't loud or violent. It was subtle and constant, like a current pushing Gavin exactly where she wanted him to go. Evelyn was gifted with words. She knew how to make Gavin feel guilty for any thought that strayed from Whitmore destiny. When he questioned a decision or showed resistance, she'd give that calculated half smile and say something like, "Do you think your life is only yours, Gavin? Every choice you make affects generations. Think of your grandparents. Think of me." Even as an adult, Gavin never fully escaped her shadow. He tried to convince himself everything was fine, that his choices were his. But deep down, he knew it was Evelyn, pulling the strings. When he met Claire and fell in love, it was one of the rare moments he felt he had something that was solely his. Claire was simple, kind, and made Gavin truly laugh, something he didn't do often. During the first years of marriage, he believed he could balance both worlds, his love for Claire and his devotion to the Whitmore family. But Evelyn never approved of Claire. She never said it outright. That wasn't her style. Instead, she'd drop subtle comments that made her opinion clear. "Claire seems like a nice girl, but have you thought about the future, Gavin? Is she ready to be part of a family like ours? She doesn't understand the responsibilities that come with our name." Not her fault, of course. Evelyn planted doubts in Gavin's mind without ever sounding rude or obvious. Despite all that, Claire and Gavin married. From the outside, life looked perfect. The parties they attended, the smiling photos, the trips to incredible places, everything suggested a couple without problems. But within the walls of the Whitmore mansion, the reality was different. And the biggest problem in their marriage wasn't something the two of them created. It was Evelyn's constant interference. From the start, Claire knew it wouldn't be easy dealing with her mother-in-law. The day they met, she sensed that woman was different. Evelyn had a way of speaking that made Claire feel small, even when the words sounded sweet. It was as if Evelyn were always evaluating, judging, waiting for Claire to slip so she could prove Claire didn't belong, wasn't good enough to be part of that family. Claire tried, hard. She aimed to be the ideal wife, supported Gavin in everything, and made sure to show up for family events even when she felt out of place. She knew Evelyn never truly accepted her, but loved Gavin enough to try. The problem worsened when, after 3 years of marriage, Claire still hadn't gotten pregnant. At first, Claire and Gavin tried not to stress. They thought it was only a matter of time. Claire did tests, started taking vitamins, followed every medical recommendation. But as months passed and nothing happened, the pressure mounted. Evelyn, who had kept her comments subtle, grew more direct. "Have you considered other doctors?" Maybe a specialist, she'd say, looking at Claire with that harmless-looking smile that always hid a barb. Gavin tried to ease the tension. He knew Claire was doing everything she could and how sensitive the subject was for her, but he also knew his mother wouldn't back off. Evelyn made sure to remind him, time and again, that the clock was ticking. "You're the only Whitmore who can continue the legacy, Gavin. We don't have the luxury of waiting forever." The phrase echoed in his mind. He didn't know how to answer it. He loved Claire, but he also felt the weight of the family's history on his shoulders. It was as if he lived split between two worlds: the love for his wife, and the obligation to his mother, and the Whitmore name. The situation began to strain their relationship. Pressured by Evelyn, Gavin started avoiding conversations about it with Claire. He didn't want to hurt her, but didn't know how to handle any of it. Claire, on the other hand, felt the distance growing. She knew Gavin had changed, but he never said anything. One night, after another dinner where Evelyn had made a few pointed remarks about the importance of family and the weight of responsibility, Claire couldn't hold it in. When they reached their bedroom, she confronted Gavin. "Are you going to stay quiet forever? Let your mother run our lives like we don't have a voice? Because that's what's happening, Gavin," she decides, "and you bow your head." Gavin stayed silent a few seconds. He knew Claire was right, but admitting it felt impossible. "Claire, it's not that simple. It's not just about my mother. It's about our family, about what happens in the future. And since when does that depend only on me?" Claire answered, voice trembling. "You think I don't want this? You think I don't feel this pressure every day, like it's all my fault?" The fight was intense, but ended like all the others, without a solution. Gavin shut down, as he always did when things got hard. Claire cried alone in the bathroom, feeling their marriage slipping through her fingers. In the days that followed, the tension between them only grew. Gavin worked even later to avoid being home. Claire tried to ignore Evelyn's looks at family gatherings, but feeling constantly judged was unbearable. One day, while Claire was in the yard tending flowers she'd planted, Evelyn showed up. The mother-in-law rarely spoke to her directly, but that day she decided to. "Claire, you're a good girl, but being a Whitmore requires more than that. Gavin has responsibilities that go far beyond a marriage. He is the future of this family, and we must be certain he's surrounded by the right people. You understand that, don't you?" Claire was speechless. It was as if Evelyn had said plainly that she wasn't enough, that despite everything Claire did, she would never be good enough. When Gavin got home that night, Claire was waiting in the living room. She told him what Evelyn had said, hoping he would defend her and take her side. But once again, Gavin stayed quiet. He knew his mother was wrong, but couldn't bring himself to face her. That's when Claire realized she was alone in this fight. She loved Gavin, but he wasn't capable of standing up to Evelyn. What began as a partnership full of love and dreams was turning into something cold, full of silence and distance, and Evelyn, as always, was in control. Evelyn Whitmore was never a woman to waste time. When she saw something was off plan, she dealt with it directly. To her, the problem in Gavin and Claire's marriage had been obvious for a while. Claire couldn't provide the heirs the Whitmore family needed. Evelyn had tried to be patient, or at least what she considered patience. She'd left hints, made countless insinuations, even had more direct talks with Gavin. Now she was done waiting. It was time to act. One afternoon, while Gavin worked in the office at the mansion, Evelyn appeared. As always, immaculate, wearing an outfit seemingly designed to intimidate. She entered without knocking. Everything in the Whitmore house was hers, and sat in the chair across from her son, beginning with her typical approach. Calm, controlled, but full of intent between the lines. "Gavin, I need to talk to you about something serious," she began, as if it were just another casual chat. "I've been patient, but it's been 3 years, and you know what that means for our family." Gavin knew where this was going. He'd known even before she started. He closed his laptop, sighed, and braced for what came next. "Mom, please, I've heard this before. Claire and I are doing what we can. It's not just up to us." Evelyn leaned forward, making it clear the subject wouldn't end with an easy excuse. "This isn't about blame, Gavin. It's about reality. Our family can't wait forever. Do you not see what's at stake? Everything we've built, everything our ancestors fought to keep, depends on you." "I know that, Gavin. answered, trying to stay calm, but I love Claire. I can't just ignore that. Evelyn gave a small smile, that one that made Gavin feel like a child again. Love is beautiful, Gavin. But love doesn't pay the bills, and love doesn't carry a legacy. You're confusing what you want with your responsibility as a Whitmore, and that's not acceptable. The conversation went on like that for a while, Gavin defending Claire, Evelyn steering everything back to the family, until she finally said what she'd intended from the start. You need to make a decision. Claire is a good woman, but she isn't right for you. She cannot give our family what it needs. If she can't, you have to choose, her or our legacy. The words hit like a punch. He knew his mother was controlling, but hearing it out loud was brutally sobering. It was an ultimatum, and Evelyn wasn't asking. You're saying I should divorce her? Gavin asked, torn between anger and disbelief. Evelyn shrugged, as if it were obvious. That's exactly what I'm saying. Think about what matters most, Gavin. If you choose Claire, everything we've built will collapse. Our family's story ends with you. Those words echoed for days. He drifted even further from Claire, trapped in an inner battle he couldn't win. He loved her, but his mother's pressure was unbearable. Evelyn didn't let up. Every time she saw him, she found a way to bring it up, making Gavin feel the weight of Whitmore generations on his back. Claire, meanwhile, felt the impact of Gavin's distance, but didn't know what was happening. He avoided deeper conversations, always tired or distracted, and the little tenderness they once shared had grown rare. One night at dinner, Claire tried. What's going on with you, Gavin? You barely talk to me. You're always somewhere else. Is it work? Your mother? What's bothering you? He hesitated, wanted to tell the truth. But how? Never! How could he say that his own mother was telling him to divorce his wife? How could he explain he was being forced to choose between Claire and an abstract idea of legacy? I'm just tired, Claire. A lot of work, he said, looking away. Claire knew it was more. Deep down, she felt something bigger was happening, but Gavin wouldn't let her in. Evelyn, for her part, kept pressing Gavin. She never left loose ends. When she saw he was taking too long, she moved. One morning, she invited Gavin for coffee on the porch, something she rarely did. He knew it meant she had something serious to say. After a few minutes of small talk, Evelyn went straight to the point. Gavin, I've waited long enough. You need to decide now. If you don't, I'll decide for you. What do you mean? He asked, startled. If you aren't man enough to do what needs to be done, I will find a way to get Claire out of your life. One way or another, Gavin. She will not remain here. That was the moment Gavin realized he had no choice. Evelyn was determined, and he knew what she was capable of. He spent that night awake, fighting himself, searching for a solution that wouldn't destroy him. In the end, he gave in. Not because he wanted to, but because he felt there was no other option. The next day, Gavin asked Claire to talk. He could barely look at her. Claire, this isn't working. I think we need to separate. The words came out mechanical, emotionless. He wanted to scream, apologize, explain, but nothing he could say would change it. Claire was stunned. She tried to understand, asked questions, but Gavin didn't answer. He stood up and left the room, leaving Claire alone with a broken heart. And Evelyn? She was satisfied. To her, this wasn't an ending, just the beginning of a new chapter where she continued to control everything around her. When Gavin delivered the news, Claire's world collapsed. The pain wasn't just from the end of the marriage, but from how it happened. Cold, quick, with no real explanation. Gavin, once her partner, her rock, was simply gone, leaving Claire to carry the weight alone. That same week, Evelyn made it clear. Claire was no longer welcome in the Whitmore mansion. There were no screams, no scene. That wasn't Evelyn's style. Everything happened calculatedly. The staff started ignoring Claire. Her belongings were packed and set aside. The air grew suffocating, leaving her with no choice. Evelyn appeared in Claire's doorway at a convenient moment, when Gavin wasn't around. I imagine you're already thinking where you'll stay, Claire. It wouldn't be appropriate for you to remain here, considering the circumstances devastated, Claire answered. I have nowhere to go, Mrs. Whitmore. Not now, Evelyn gave that small, calculated smile Claire had seen so many times. I trust a woman like you will find her way. After all, you're no longer part of our family. And that's how Claire was pushed out of a place that had never truly been hers. With a few bags and no idea where to begin, she decided to go to Chicago, a city big enough to disappear and start over. Arriving in Chicago was a shock. The last few years Claire had lived surrounded by luxury and comfort, every need met without lifting a finger. Now she was alone in a huge city full of people who didn't know or care about her. In the first days, she rented a tiny room in a simple boarding house downtown. It was all she could afford with the few dollars she had managed to save. The room was cramped, with peeling walls and a constant scent of damp. It was nothing like the life she had before, but Claire knew she couldn't afford to complain. She spent weeks trying to find a job. With no work experience, each attempt was more frustrating than the last. In interviews, questions about her past cut like knives. Why did you leave your previous position? Do you have references? Claire didn't have convincing answers. Days dragged. Mornings were for walking the city, hunting for work. Afternoons for forms and resumes. Nights for trying not to cry while staring at the ceiling. The loneliness suffocated her. She had no friends there, no family who could help, and Gavin, well, he had disappeared from her life. Savings dried up, and Claire had to take what she could find. A job at a small coffee shop, spending the day washing dishes and bussing tables. It wasn't what she imagined for herself, but it paid rent and bought food. Claire settled into the new routine, even if it was hard and often lonely. She woke early to catch a packed bus, arrived at the coffee shop, spent hours on her feet, and returned to the suffocating silence of the boarding house room. Her life had shrunk to this: work, exhaustion, survival. In recent days, though, something felt different. Claire had been feeling off, though she didn't want to admit it, not even to herself. She noticed unusual fatigue even when she slept well. Some foods she once liked now made her nauseous. At first, she blamed stress or something she'd eaten, but the symptoms didn't pass. One morning, mid-shift, a wave of dizziness hit so hard she had to lean on the counter. A coworker noticed. "You okay?" "You're pale," Claire tried to play it off. "It's just the heat. I probably haven't had enough water." Deep down, she knew something was wrong. The nausea came more often, sometimes sending her running to the bathroom before clock-in. And then came the thought she'd tried to ignore. It could be pregnancy. That night, after work, Claire walked to a pharmacy. She went in slowly, heart thudding faster with each step. Funny how something as simple as buying a pregnancy test could feel enormous. She took one from the shelf, paid, and left with the bag as if it were contraband. Back in her room, she sat on the bed for long minutes, staring at the test as if it could decide her entire future. And deep down, it could. After a few deep breaths, she finally found the courage and took it. When she saw the result, her hands trembled. 2 lines, clear, unmistakable, positive. She was pregnant. For a few seconds, Claire didn't move, trying to process what it meant. First came the shock. How could she raise a child alone, with no one to help? She barely managed to care for herself. How would she manage a baby? But then a wave of something she hadn't felt in a long time arrived. Hope. She held the test like a tiny miracle. "I'm going to be a mum," she whispered, tears falling, not only from sadness or fear, but from something beautiful in that discovery. Despite everything she'd lost, Claire now had something to fight for. The following days were a whirlwind of emotions. Claire went to a nearby community health clinic to confirm the pregnancy. Sitting in the waiting room, she looked at other women and wondered if they too had ridden the same roller coaster of feelings. When the doctor confirmed what she already knew, Claire thanked her and left with a head full of plans and doubts. The biggest surprise came weeks later, during the first ultrasound. Claire was nervous as usual, but the nurse seemed calm and upbeat. After a few minutes studying the screen, the nurse smiled. "You know there are 2, right?" Claire frowned, confused. "2 what?" "Babies. You're having twins." The shock was instant. Twins. Claire couldn't imagine caring for 1 baby, let alone 2. She stayed quiet, absorbing the news. But as she watched the screen with those tiny points who would be her children, a determination grew inside her. When she left the clinic, Claire felt different. The fear was still there, but now something greater stood beside it. She knew it wouldn't be easy, but she would do anything to give those babies a good life. The weeks that followed were full of adjustments. Claire saved even more, cutting every unnecessary expense. She tucked away what little money remained in a small box in the closet, spent only on essentials, and started thinking practically about the future. She'd need a bigger place, maybe a job with more flexible hours, and baby clothes she'd start buying as soon as possible. In the middle of it all, Claire caught herself thinking about Gavin. He was their father. Part of her wanted to tell him, but every time that idea surfaced, Claire pushed it away. After what he'd done, she knew she couldn't depend on him. Gavin had chosen to leave her behind, and Claire decided she didn't need anyone who didn't want to stand by her. As hard as it would be, she knew she could face this alone. Those babies were hers, and she'd do everything to protect them. Even on days when exhaustion felt unbearable, or when loneliness hit hardest, Claire found strength by thinking of them. Pregnancy brought challenges Claire had never imagined, but also something she hadn't known she needed, a new reason to keep going. The life she'd lost with Gavin no longer seemed so important. What mattered now was the future she would build for her children, and Claire knew that no matter how complicated, she was ready to fight. When Peter and Luke were born, Claire's life flipped upside down, but in a way she never imagined possible. The moment she held them for the first time, she knew nothing else mattered. Those two tiny, defenseless babies were now her reason for everything, but their arrival brought challenges she couldn't have foreseen. She was alone in a modest hospital room with scarce resources and no visitors. No flowers, no relatives to celebrate, only nurses helping with the basics. Gavin wasn't there, and Claire didn't bother telling him. For her, it was the start of a new life, just her and her sons. Back at the boarding house with the twins, reality hit hard. Raising two babies alone wasn't just difficult, it was almost impossible. They woke crying every few hours, one right after the other, which meant Claire never truly rested. Her body was exhausted from the birth, but there was no time to recover. If she wasn't tending to Peter and Luke, she was hand-washing clothes, prepping bottles, or trying to organize the chaos of a space barely big enough for three. The first weeks were chaotic. Claire thought she wouldn't make it. Many nights, sitting on the floor with one baby in each arm, she cried from pure exhaustion. There was no one to help, no one to say it would be okay. Somehow, with each sunrise, she found the strength to continue. Money was a constant problem. The coffee shop paycheck barely covered rent and formula. Claire cut everything she could. No eating out, only essentials at the grocery store, and not a penny wasted on electricity. Lights off whenever possible. She learned to be creative, thrifted clothes for the boys, reused what she could. Slowly, she built a routine. During the day, she left the twins with an older woman at the boarding house who watched children for a small fee while Claire went to the coffee shop. It hurt to leave them, but she knew she needed the job to support them. At first, the guilt ate at her whenever she walked out the door, but with time she learned to bear it. Even working so much, Claire made sure to be present for Peter and Luke at night. After a long day, she still sang them to sleep, even if her voice came out thin from exhaustion. In rare, quiet moments, she'd look at them and feel a peace she'd never known. Their first smiles, first steps, first words, each felt like a small miracle that made her forget, even for a moment, every hardship. Peter was calmer, which helped, while Luke brimmed with boundless energy. Different personalities, equally precious to Claire. Still, there were days when the weight of solitude was almost unbearable. Claire wondered how things might have been if Gavin had been there, but she pushed the thought away. Gavin had chosen another path, and she couldn't waste time on him. When the boys grew a little, things improved. Claire got a better job as a receptionist at a small clinic. It wasn't a lot of money, but it paid more than the coffee shop, and the hours were more flexible. She could spend more time with the boys. At the clinic, Claire met people who helped her see she didn't have to do everything alone. A co-worker told her about a community daycare near home where Peter and Luke could stay during the day without costing much. Another taught her budget-friendly recipes to feed the boys well. Small gestures, huge difference. Even so, challenges kept coming. The boys got sick sometimes, and Claire faced it alone. One night etched into memory. Luke had a high fever, and Peter cried for attention. Claire spent hours trying to bring down one fever while soothing the other. It was exhausting, but she got through it. With time, Claire realized she was stronger than she imagined. Every difficulty only made her more resilient. She knew she couldn't give her sons the luxury Gavin could, but she could give them something more valuable: love and safety. On their third birthday, Claire saved enough for a small party, a store-bought cake and balloons she blew up herself. For Peter and Luke, it was enough. Seeing their smiles as they sang Happy Birthday was one of the happiest moments of Claire's life. Looking back, she knew those first years were hard, but also the most important. The boys grew up knowing they had a mother who would do anything for them. And though many things were missing, the most important was never missing: the unconditional love Claire had for both. Years passed, and Gavin Whitmore's life looked perfect from the outside. He had what most people dream of: a solid career, social status, a grand home, and Victoria, his new wife, stunning and strategically perfect to cement ties between two influential families. But inside, the truth was different. Gavin felt empty. After divorcing Claire, he tried to convince himself he'd done what needed to be done. What was right for the Whitmores? Evelyn had repeated so often that he had no choice, that it was for the greater good, that he believed it, or tried to. But a few weeks were enough to show him it wasn't that simple. Victoria was exactly what Evelyn wanted: elegant, discreet, and accustomed to the cold, calculated world of the Whitmores. For Gavin, she was a mirror of what was wrong in his life. Victoria was a good person, but they shared nothing beyond the roles they performed to keep up appearances. Their marriage had no passion, no partnership, none of the connection he'd felt with Claire. In the first years, the weight of his decision grew. Victoria tried to get close, but he could barely hide his lack of interest. He was there physically, but his mind was elsewhere, and that elsewhere had a name: Claire. Regret grew like a shadow he couldn't escape. He thought of her all the time, the way she laughed at his jokes, even when they weren't funny, their long talks in bed after hard days, and above all, how she made him feel like he was enough, like he had nothing to prove. Now he was trapped in a marriage he didn't want, in a life that didn't feel like his, in the role of the perfect heir that Evelyn had crafted since childhood. Victoria noticed something was wrong. She was smart. Though she never admitted it, she knew Gavin didn't love her. He was polite and attentive enough to avoid problems, but there was nothing beyond that. For her, the marriage, too, was a social contract rather than a real union. That didn't make it less uncomfortable. Meanwhile, Evelyn played her role as the matriarch, controlling everything. To her, Gavin's life was exactly where it should be: married to the right person, keeping the Whitmore name strong, and, sooner or later, producing the heirs she craved. Evelyn didn't see what was happening inside her son. Gavin was increasingly disconnected. He buried himself in work to avoid being home, but even that didn't help. At the office, stray scents, songs, or a co-worker's expression triggered memories he wished to forget. He wondered about Claire. Had she moved on? Did she hate him? He knew he'd broken her heart and couldn't go back. He was stuck in a web of obligations and expectations, and any move to escape felt impossible. Nights were the worst. Victoria slept beside him while he lay awake staring at the ceiling, asking himself where everything went wrong. He'd followed what he thought was the right path. So why did he feel so empty? The weight of Gavin's choices demanded a price. He started drinking more than usual, searching for an escape that never came. Hours in bars after work, sitting alone, staring into a glass, thinking how his life had lost its meaning. One night, after too many drinks, he came home to find Victoria waiting, sitting in the living room, looking at him with pity and frustration. He knew she was trying to be understanding, and that only made him feel worse. "Why do you do this to yourself, Gavin?" she finally asked. He didn't answer. What could he say? That he was unhappy? That he missed the woman he'd sent away? That he didn't know how to escape the prison he'd built? None of it would change the fact that he was trapped. With time, Victoria found out she was pregnant. Evelyn was thrilled. This was all she wanted. Gavin, meanwhile, felt a flicker of excitement, but seemed oddly detached. When Eleanor was born, Victoria hoped Gavin would change. He didn't. Days looked the same, nights were full of thoughts and regrets. He became a man who lived out of obligation, not desire, and what bothered him most was knowing that somewhere, Claire was building a life he'd never had the courage to give her. Picking up right where we stopped, the new life Claire built wasn't something she chose. It was something she had to assemble from scratch, piece by piece, after everything she knew was taken from her. When she found herself alone with two babies and practically nothing in her pocket, she knew she couldn't afford the luxury of giving up. Peter and Luke depended on her, and that alone was enough to power every step she needed to take. Once the exhausting routine of the twins' first month settled, Claire began to see more clearly. Slowly she realized the life she'd had before, despite all its luxury and comfort, was never really hers. In the mansion, she'd been a puzzle piece that never fit, trying to squeeze into a picture that wasn't made for her. Now, for all the difficulty of her new reality, every tiny win was hers, genuine and hard-earned. She still lived in the same boarding house, but she managed to rent a slightly bigger room. It wasn't impressive. The walls showed water stains, and the damp smell crept in on humid days. But to her, it was progress. It was a space where she and her boys were safe, where she could be whoever she needed to be without anyone telling her she wasn't enough. The receptionist job at the small clinic brought stability. The paycheck was modest, but steady. She could count on it when the month's bills came due. The workplace, too, was kinder than anything she'd known at the mansion. The clinic team was small, and over time she drew closer to her co-workers. Not deep friendships, maybe, but it was good to chat during the day, to swap little stories and hear a simple, "You're doing great." Peter and Luke were now enrolled in a community daycare near home, and that changed everything. For the first time, Claire had a few hours to herself. At first, she didn't know what to do with the quiet. It felt strange not to race to change diapers or prep bottles. Eventually, she realized she could use those moments to care for herself. Sometimes that meant sitting on a park bench just to breathe. Other times it meant trying to read a book, or, on more practical days, doing laundry without having to pause for a crying baby. She knew her life wasn't perfect, money was tight, and she often had to juggle to ensure nothing vital was missing. She got creative, thrifted clothes for the boys, simple home-cooked meals, pounced on every store promotion she could find. At first she felt embarrassed. With time she saw it as strength. Every sacrifice was another step toward giving her sons a dignified life. One afternoon at the daycare, Claire met Andrew. He was a physician volunteering in the neighborhood for a vaccination drive. He was kind and attentive. She didn't think much of him at first. But as days passed, they talked more. He seemed genuinely interested in her story, and unlike some, never pitied her. If anything, he respected her. Andrew admired Claire's resilience, but never said it like a lecture. It came through in how he listened. Claire hesitated a long time before allowing Andrew close. Trust was hard. She feared getting hurt again, or creating confusion for her sons. Andrew never pushed. He was steady, patient, and clear that he wanted to help only when she was ready. His support was something new for Claire. He became a constant presence in her life, but lightly, never trying to take Gavin's place or rearrange what Claire had built. He understood that her strength came from the independence she'd fought for, and he honored that. With Andrew around, Claire felt less alone. He helped with little things, walking the boys to daycare on tough mornings, fixing something in the apartment when it broke. Mostly, he brought a calm Claire hadn't known she needed. Meanwhile, Peter and Luke grew wild with energy and curiosity, the center of Claire's world. Even on her most tired days, she got down on the floor to play, made up bedtime stories, or just listened to their laughter echo through the room. Every milestone felt like a victory. Peter's first scribbled drawing from daycare, proudly stuck to the wall. The day Luke finally tied his own shoelaces, cheered like a championship. Those small things were the foundation of Claire's new life, and she knew every moment was worth it. Over time, she realized that while this life was full of challenges, it was more authentic than anything she'd had before. She still felt the scars of the past, but that's all they were now, marks of something that no longer ruled her. The life she was building, brick by brick, was hers, and above all, it was full of love. It was an ordinary day. After a long work week, Claire decided to take the boys to the park. The place was small, but perfect for Peter and Luke to run, take turns on the swings, and spend all that endless energy. Claire loved watching them. Every laugh made her proud. She had managed to give them a happy childhood, despite everything. While the boys chased a kite another child was flying, she sat on a bench near the walking path. A breeze touched her face. For a moment, everything was peaceful. Across the park, Gavin headed toward the parking lot. He was in town on a business trip and had chosen to take a short walk to clear his head before returning to the hotel. Something about the park, the lightness, the sound of kids playing, lifted the weight he carried. That's when he saw Claire. From a distance, he wasn't sure it was her. She seemed different, more alive, stronger. He hesitated, heart pounding, tempted to keep walking as if he hadn't seen her. Before he could decide, something else caught his eye. 2 boys playing near Claire. 2 identical boys, laughing as they ran toward her. Gavin froze. Light brown hair, eyes so familiar he couldn't look away, his own eyes. The shock knocked the breath from him. He looked again, trying to understand. Those boys couldn't be his. They couldn't. But everything about them said they were. Claire lifted her head and caught his stare. Time stopped. She hadn't expected to see him there, not after so many years. Her heart leapt. Anger, surprise, nerves tangled together. Gavin started toward her, hesitant but determined. He needed answers. Claire, for a second, wanted to grab the boys and run. She knew that was impossible. "Claire," Gavin said when he reached the bench, his voice low, like he didn't quite believe what he was seeing. "Gavin," she answered, trying to sound calm, though her voice shook. For a few beats they said nothing. The park filled the silence, children's laughter, leaves in the wind, a distant dog bark. Gavin began but couldn't finish. Claire knew the question. She crossed her arms, defensive. "Why are you here, Gavin?" "I didn't know you were here," he said, flustered. "But them, Claire, are they my sons?" She looked at the boys, now sitting on the grass playing with a ball. Denial would be pointless. The resemblance was undeniable. Claire sighed and answered, "Yes, Gavin. They're your sons, Peter and Luke." The confirmation hit him like a punch. Shock, guilt, regret. Then something like joy, sharp and painful, washed over him. More than anything, crushing guilt. Everything he'd lost, everything he could have had. It was right there, and he wasn't part of it, because of his choices. "Why didn't you tell me?" His voice cracked. Claire gave a short, humorless laugh. "Do you really need to ask? After what happened, after how you left me, why would I?" Gavin lowered his head. He knew he had no answer that would make sense. Peter and Luke noticed Claire with someone and ran up. "Mum, who's that?" Peter asked, curious. Claire hesitated. She didn't want to lie, but she also didn't want to throw the boys into chaos. "He's an acquaintance," she said finally. They accepted it and went back to play. Gavin stood there, speechless. He wanted to say something, anything, but the words jammed in his throat. Claire broke the silence, voice steady but laden with feeling. "You made your choice, Gavin. Now I'm making mine. They're my life. I won't let you walk in and shake apart what I built for them." He wanted to argue, but she was right. He'd chosen a different road and now lived with the consequences. As she walked away with Peter and Luke, he stayed rooted to the spot, trying to process what had just happened. His life had felt empty before, now it felt hollowed out. He'd lost more than he realized, and it was entirely his fault. After that unexpected encounter, Gavin couldn't think of anything else. Every detail of their brief conversation, every stolen look at Peter and Luke, burned into his mind. He barely slept. Questions looped. How could Claire keep something this big from him? What had happened over the last years that kept him so far from children he didn't know existed? Most of all, what should he do now? By morning, he'd decided, he had to talk to Claire, really talk, and hear the whole truth. He couldn't go back to life as if nothing had changed. Those boys were his sons, and he had a right to know them. Claire, meanwhile, braced herself. From the moment Gavin saw them in the park, she knew he would come. He wasn't the type to leave huge questions unanswered. That didn't mean she was ready to face him. Gavin showed up at the boarding house. It was worn with time, but there was a warmth he didn't recognize from the Whitmore mansion. A simple, human warmth. When Claire opened the door, her stomach knotted. She wasn't surprised, but his presence destabilized her anyway. What do you want, Gavin? She asked, not moving aside. Claire, we need to talk, please, he said, serious, almost pleading. She hesitated, then stepped back and pointed to a chair in the small living area. Gavin took in the markers of her new life: toys on the floor, a table scattered with crayon drawings, a little cabinet with neatly folded clothes. It was simple, but it was a home built on love. Say what you came to say. I don't have much time, Claire said, arms crossed. He drew a breath. Why didn't you tell me about them? About Peter and Luke? She gave a short, bitter laugh. You really want to go there, after everything? After the way you treated me? After the way you left me? I know I was wrong, he said, eyes fixed on hers, but that doesn't justify keeping my kids from me. They're my sons too, Claire. I had a right to know. She held his gaze in silence, weighing his words, then answered, voice firm. You had a right to know, yes, and I had a right to be treated like a human being, which I wasn't. When I needed you most, you chose your mother and the Whitmore name, and you threw me out like I was disposable. So don't come in here talking about rights. The truth landed hard. He had no defense. I thought I was doing what had to be done, he said weakly. My mother, she… Oh, your mother, Claire cut in, a sharp, sarcastic laugh. Always her demands, and you never had the courage to say no. Never had the courage to stand by me. So yes, I moved on without you. I never reached out because I knew you'd never truly be on our side. I was lost, Claire. I didn't know what to do, but I've changed. I want to change. I want to be in their lives. Be in their lives? She almost couldn't believe it. What exactly do you think you can offer, Gavin? You don't know anything about them. You weren't there when they were born. You weren't there for the sleepless nights, the doctor's visits, the birthdays. Now you show up thinking you can stroll into their world like nothing happened. He had no answer. Everything she said was true. He'd missed it all. Still, he couldn't accept being shut out forever. I can't change the past, but I want to try. Please, Claire, let me meet them. Let me be their father. For a moment, Claire's face softened, and Gavin thought she might relent. Then she shook her head. The life I built is safe and stable. They have everything they need. I won't let you come in and wreck that. I don't want to wreck anything, he insisted. I just want to be present. You want to be present now. Where were you when I needed you? Where were you when they needed you? You chose to leave, Gavin. Choices have consequences. Her voice was steel. He'd never heard from her before. He lowered his head, defeated. He wanted to argue, but he knew she was right. Now, if you'll excuse me, Claire said, opening the door, my sons need me. Gavin stepped out with a heavier heart than when he arrived. He knew reconnecting would be difficult, maybe impossible, but for the first time, he was willing to fight. Claire might be resolute, but he couldn't give up. Peter and Luke were part of him, and he had to find a way to be part of their lives, somehow. Evelyn Whitmore didn't sit out important matters, especially those she believed concerned the family's future. News that Gavin had children, twin boys, hit like a bomb inside Evelyn's carefully controlled world. He had tried to keep it from her. That never lasted. She overheard him on the phone in his office. His tone alone betrayed him. I just want a chance to talk to Claire. They're my sons, too. Sons, twins. She couldn't believe Gavin had hidden something so enormous. More than shock, she felt a flare of anger. And though she'd never admit it, fear. Those boys represented everything she prized. They were Whitmore's. They were the legacy. That same day, she called Gavin in. He knew this moment would come. You have something to tell me, she said in that unmistakable tone. I don't know what you're talking about, Mom, he tried pointlessly. I heard you. Don't insult me. Who are these children? Gavin sighed. No use dodging it. They're my sons, Mom. Peter and Luke, twins. Evelyn went silent, absorbing the information. Calmly, she asked, and why did you think I didn't need to know something so important? Because I knew how you'd react, he answered, with more firmness than he usually mustered around her. And I didn't want you interfering. This is my responsibility. Evelyn gave a short, sarcastic laugh. Your responsibility? You don't understand what's at stake. Those boys are Whitmore's. They are this family's future. And you thought you could hide them from me. They aren't your responsibility, Mom. They're my sons. I'll handle this my way. But Evelyn had already decided. It was unacceptable that two heirs were growing up outside her influence. Worse, under Claire's care, the woman she deemed unfit from the beginning. In the following days, Evelyn moved. She hired a private investigator. It didn't take long to compile files, where Claire lived, where she worked, the boys' routine, even information about Andrew, the man who seemed present in their lives. Armed with all that, Evelyn paid an unannounced visit, without telling Gavin. When Claire opened her apartment door and found Evelyn there, every muscle tensed. It was like seeing a ghost she'd hoped never to face again. "Mrs. Whitmore," Claire said, voice cool. "What are you doing here?" "Claire, dear, we need to talk," Evelyn answered, with that false smile Claire knew too well. Claire hesitated, then let her in, more to end it quickly than out of respect. Evelyn surveyed the small place, assessing. "So this is where my grandsons are growing up." "If you came to judge, you can leave now," Claire shot back. "I didn't come to judge, Claire. I came to talk about the future, about Peter and Luke. They have a future. A good one, and it does not involve you," Claire said, arms crossed. Evelyn ignored it. "Those boys are Whitmores. They have a legacy. I won't allow them to be raised away from the opportunities they deserve. They're entitled to more than you can provide." "I don't need your help or your money," Claire answered, firm. "This isn't about money. It's about heritage and responsibility. Do you truly believe you can give them everything? Education, stability, the name they carry?" Claire felt her blood boil. "Peter and Luke have everything they need. Love, and a life far from your family's toxicity. I'll do whatever it takes to keep it that way." Evelyn narrowed her eyes. "You may think you're protecting them, but you're denying them something greater. If you won't see it, I'll take the necessary steps to ensure my grandsons get what they deserve." Claire let out a bitter laugh. "Necessary steps? You'll try to take my children from me? Good luck, Mrs. Whitmore. You'll need it." Evelyn stood, smoothing her coat. "I hope you reconsider, Claire. I won't give up. Those boys have Whitmore blood. Sooner or later, they will take their rightful place." When the door shut behind Evelyn, Claire sank onto the couch, trying to process what had just happened. She knew Evelyn was dangerous, but hadn't imagined she'd go this far. One thing was certain. She would not let that woman near Peter and Luke, no matter what it took. Claire understood she couldn't face this alone. For years she'd been strong, carrying everything by herself. But this was different. Evelyn wasn't just difficult. She was powerful, well-connected, and relentless. Claire needed support. Andrew was the one to call. He'd always been present without intruding. He worked hard, but found time for the boys, walking them to daycare when Claire couldn't, teaching little tricks like tying laces, being there on the hard nights, like the fever scare with Luke. That evening, hands shaking, Claire phoned. "Can you come?" "It's serious," she said, fighting tears. Andrew arrived fast. One look at her and he knew something was wrong. "What happened?" he asked. She told him everything, from the park to Evelyn's threats. He listened without interrupting. When she finished, he was quiet for a beat, then said, "She won't stop, Claire. You know that, right?" "I know," Claire said softly, "but I won't let her near my sons. Whatever it takes." "Then we face it together," Andrew said, leaning forward, expression firm. "You don't have to do this alone." "I can't involve you," Claire protested. "It's my problem, my battle." "You already involved me," he answered, offering a small smile to ease the moment. "I love those boys. I love you. If Evelyn thinks she can just walk in and take what you built, she's very mistaken. I won't let that happen." The words caught Claire off guard. She knew he cared, but hearing it so plainly moved her. For the first time in a long time, she felt not entirely alone. From that point, Andrew helped her prepare. He suggested they find an attorney who understood this kind of pressure. They did, someone who explained that Evelyn's chances of getting custody were minimal, though she might chase grandparents' rights or supervised visitation. More likely, she was counting on emotional exhaustion to force Claire to cave. "She wants to wear you down," the attorney said. "But you have the advantage. You've always been the primary caregiver. Your boys are in a stable environment. That's what matters." Encouraging words aside, Claire didn't let her guard down. Evelyn didn't play fair. Claire documented everything, Letters, threats, even interactions with Evelyn. What weighed on her most wasn't the courtroom, it was the boys. They could sense something was wrong. "Mum, why are you sad?" Peter asked one night as she tucked them in. Claire tried to smile. "I'm not sad, sweetheart. I'm just making sure you're always safe and happy." Luke chimed in with an innocent grin. "You always do that, Mum. You're the best mum in the world." Those words gave her the strength she needed. Evelyn might have money and clout, but Claire had something Evelyn would never understand: unconditional love and the resolve to protect her children at any cost. The battle had only begun. Gavin was exhausted, beyond sleep. Since seeing Claire and the twins, something had shifted. As conflict escalated between Claire and Evelyn, he began to see things clearly. For years, he had justified his actions or inaction with tidy excuses. He told himself leaving Claire protected her, that preserving the Whitmore name was necessary. He knew now those were lies. He wasn't protecting anyone. He had been afraid. He'd lived his whole life under Evelyn's shadow. From childhood, he'd been taught his choices weren't his. His life reflected his mother's expectations. For years, he accepted it as the price of being a Whitmore. Now, facing what it had cost, losing Claire, missing his son's early years, he knew he couldn't keep living this way. One late night, Gavin sat alone in the mansion office. The room, once a symbol of power, felt suffocating, lined with certificates and photos Evelyn loved to display. He stared at them, feeling anger and sorrow in equal measure. "This means nothing," he whispered. For the first time, the achievements didn't feel like his. They were Evelyn's trophies. That night he decided he couldn't be the obedient son anymore. He had to find his voice, even if it meant confronting his mother. Above all, he had to become a father. Peter and Luke deserved that. Change came in small steps. He began to distance himself from Evelyn, skipping the family strategy dinners she used to keep him in line. When she questioned his choices, he answered calmly but firmly, "Mum, I know what I'm doing. Please trust me." She hated losing control. The real test came when she pushed him to join her legal fight. "You need to take a stand, Gavin. Those boys are your sons. Bring them where they belong." The old tone, the one that always worked, not this time. "No, Mom," he said. "This isn't about you or the Whitmore name. It's about them. And I won't be part of anything that might hurt my kids." Evelyn was stunned. "Are you defying me? After everything I've done for you?" "Yes," he said, "because I don't want Peter and Luke to grow up the way I did. They deserve better." The change wasn't only about facing Evelyn. Gavin began reconnecting with Claire and the boys, slowly, respectfully. He showed up at the daycare for public events, staying on the edges, not pushing Claire's boundaries. When he spoke with her, he avoided excuses. Instead, he said simple, honest things. "I just want to be better for them." Claire noticed. She still didn't fully trust him, but she couldn't deny he was trying. He wasn't the same man who had left her. That left her conflicted. Gavin also did something Evelyn would have despised. He joined a community dads group. He learned basics he'd never been taught: how to understand a child's emotions, resolve conflicts in healthy ways, and, more than anything, how to be present. He started therapy too, something he once dismissed. He began to see how Evelyn's control had shaped his choices and how to stop letting it. It was slow, painful work. He wanted to quit many times. Little by little, he felt stronger, more himself. One night, he handwrote a letter to Claire. Not a generic sorry, but a clear admission. He apologized for abandoning her when she needed him most, for letting his mother dictate his life, for missing years with Peter and Luke. He told her he wasn't asking for forgiveness, only for the chance to earn a place in the boys' lives, on her terms. He gave her the letter and didn't press for a response. Claire read it in silence. She didn't answer immediately. Forgiveness, if it came, would take time. Still, for Claire, the letter marked a turning point. She could see he was changing. He wasn't the weak man who'd thrown her away. She told him plainly, "You'll have to keep proving it." Not for me, for them. Gavin understood. He began to build a presence, picking the boys up when allowed, helping with homework, learning their interests. Luke loved soccer. Gavin started watching matches with him, showing up to weekend park kick-arounds. Peter was quieter and loved to draw. Gavin sat beside him, asking about the stories behind his pictures. Each small step reminded Gavin he was finally doing something right. It wasn't easy. Sometimes he wanted to give up, but when he looked at his sons, he knew he couldn't fail. They were his second chance. Meanwhile, the Whitmore world kept shifting. Victoria, Gavin's wife in name more than love, had long felt the weight of Evelyn's expectations and Gavin's distance. Their marriage had been a tidy arrangement, never a union of hearts. When she overheard Evelyn and Gavin arguing about the twins and pieced together the truth, something inside her snapped. It wasn't just the secret, it was realizing she wasn't surprised. Silence, secrets, convenience. This was the foundation of their marriage. That night, Victoria looked in the mirror and barely recognized herself. She'd become someone who existed to please Evelyn and perform a role. Leaving wouldn't be easy. Evelyn would try to keep up appearances, but if she didn't go now, she might never live a life that was truly hers. The next day, she packed only essentials. When Evelyn noticed, she tried her usual tactics. "You're overreacting, Victoria. Every marriage has hard spells." "This was never a real marriage," Victoria said quietly, but with steel. "I tried to be what you wanted. It was never enough, and I'm done trying." "You're throwing away everything we built," Evelyn snapped. "Maybe the world isn't generous," Victoria said, "but out there I can at least be myself. Here, I'm just a piece in your game." She went to Gavin for one last conversation. He was slumped in the office, weighed down by everything unraveling. "I'm leaving, Gavin," she said evenly. He looked up, surprised, but didn't try to stop her. He knew he hadn't been a husband to her, and she deserved more. "I'm sorry," was all he managed. She gave a small, sad smile. "Me too. Maybe this is best for both of us." She took Elena and left the Whitmore mansion with the strange lightness of someone finally breathing clean air. Gavin felt the ruin of his choices like a stone on his chest. He'd let Evelyn control everything, his marriage, his daily life. He'd lost Claire, the early years of Peter and Luke, and now Victoria had left. Everything he thought he'd built was collapsing, and yet, in the wreckage, there was a sliver of something different. A chance to start over. He couldn't erase the past. He could do right in the present. The first step was owning it. He stopped making excuses. He worked on himself. He kept showing up for Peter and Luke, within the boundaries Claire set. One school event was a small breakthrough. The boys spotted him in the crowd. Luke gave a tentative wave. It was enough to keep Gavin going for months. After the show, he approached Claire. She looked at him with her usual caution. "Thank you for not making a scene," she said. "I just want them to know I'm here," he answered. He also had the hardest conversation of his life with Evelyn. "Mum, I can't live to meet your expectations anymore. I've lost too much. Claire, Peter, and Luke are my priority now. If you can't accept that, we should keep our distance." She stared at him, stunned by his resolve. "You think you can survive without me? Without what we built?" "I think I need to try," he said. He didn't expect Evelyn to change. He changed instead. He doubled down on therapy. He learned to set boundaries and keep them. He wrote, then rewrote another letter, this time to Victoria. He asked to meet, not to get her back immediately, but to apologize for the years he'd been absent even while present. Victoria agreed to a brief, guarded talk. He told her he wanted to be a better father to Eleanor, and if one day she was willing to try, a better partner. "Don't expect anything," she warned. "If you want this, show it." So he showed it. Slowly. He took Elena to school, helped with homework, actually listened. One night, while reading to her, she asked, "Are you going to leave again, Daddy?" The words cut him to the bone. "No, sweetheart," he promised. "I'm not leaving again." With Victoria, things thawed gradually. They weren't a couple. They were two people trying to rebuild something real. Walks with Elena, dinners without pretense. Over months, she saw he truly was different. Present, attentive, human. Sitting on a park bench, watching Elena play, he said, "I never realized how trapped I was. All that control, my mother's plans, it blinded me to what we could have been." Victoria gave him a genuine smile. "I felt that too. Maybe now we can try something different, something real." Love didn't return in a rush. It grew, brick by brick, on respect, patience, and shared experience. Gavin kept his commitment to Peter and Luke too, finding a balance he'd never thought possible. Elena bloomed, having a father who put her first. Seeing the change in his daughter was the greatest reward he could imagine. The idea of legacy had always been the Whitmore religion. Evelyn spent her life preserving it: money, status, power. In the end, she'd built a hollow castle sustained by fear and control, and it finally crumbled. On the other side, Claire was building something entirely different, almost without noticing. The legacy she created for Peter and Luke wasn't wealth or prestige. It was love, resilience, and the courage to face the impossible. The boys grew in a home full of support. Every day they saw their mother's devotion and Andrew's steady presence, a model of kindness and integrity. They also saw Gavin, who, despite his failures, never gave up on being part of their lives. Over time, they learned that family isn't defined by rules or blood alone, but by the people who choose to show up and love you. With Claire at the center, what had once looked like a tangle of problems and conflict transformed into something larger and calmer. She built an environment where her sons could grow without the suffocating expectations that had crushed Gavin. Peter, gentle and creative, found encouragement to chase his drawings and stories. Luke, all motion and fire, channeled it into real achievements, backed by a circle that believed in him. Even Gavin, in his slow redemption, discovered that true legacy wasn't what Evelyn preached. It wasn't titles or money. It was the moments he now shared with his kids: Luke's weekend games, Peter's school art display. Each time he showed up, he added a brick to something that mattered more than the Whitmore name. Evelyn spent her last years alone in the mansion, reflecting on what she'd lost. Visits from Gavin were rare. She never connected with Peter and Luke. Her obsession had pushed away the only people who could have given her life meaning. When she died, there was no grand ceremony, none of the spectacle she'd have wanted. Gavin handled everything quietly, and this time he chose not to continue the cycle. He sold the Whitmore mansion and donated much of the proceeds to community causes. There was no legacy left to protect. The Whitmore name no longer carried the weight it once had. On the other side of town, Claire's family kept building something different. Together, she and Andrew created a home full of laughter, challenges overcome, and love that didn't demand perfection. Peter and Luke grew up knowing they were loved exactly as they were, without impossible expectations or pressure. In the years that followed, Peter became a talented illustrator, spinning stories from that vivid imagination. Luke found his path in sports, but never lost sight of what mattered at home. Both brothers grew certain that their lives didn't have to be defined by anything imposed on them, but by what they chose to build. Watching it all, Claire finally felt peace. She knew the world could be cruel, that things could collapse without warning, but she also knew the strength to rebuild had always been there. Her legacy didn't show up in property or bank accounts. It lived in the lives transformed by her courage and love. In the end, what remained wasn't the weight of a last name or the echo of hollow achievements. The true legacy was in hands held, honest hugs, shared laughter, and the stories they would pass down with pride. Different from the legacy Evelyn fought for, but far more powerful. Thank you for